Welcome to Make Your Mark Live. My name is Mark Moyer, and I'm super thrilled to have on board today three-time Olympian, 48 million time champion in beach volleyball, Holly McPeak from Manhattan Beach, California. Say hello, Holly.
Hi, good morning.
It is,
It's my morning,
yeah, it's my, I don't even know what it is.
afternoon.
Yeah, the whole virus thing has confused everything. The calendars, why
What
do we
day
even
of the
have a
week,
calendar?
everything.
No
Yeah,
idea.
yeah.
Someone said every day is Friday, and I'm thinking every day is, I don't know, Monday. I don't know what it is, but thanks I really appreciate you sharing your time with me today. And we have a lot of ground to cover. I want to talk a little bit about your background and your career in your sport, but also about your transition experience and how you went from playing beach volleyball for a long time and being super successful at it for a long time, but then the adjustments that you had to go through where suddenly you weren't necessarily competing anymore, and what happened in your case with you sort of mentally, physically, all that other stuff, financially, blah, blah, blah. So, but before I get into that, tell me a little bit about what it was like to pretty much grow up on the beach in Manhattan Beach.
Well, I feel very fortunate. My parents divorced when I was young. I was 4 or 5. I have a twin brother and a younger sister. But growing up in Manhattan Beach, the natural playground is the beach. So both parents, to have 3 kids, you want to take them to the beach, they can run around, get worn out. So both parents actually played volleyball on a recreational level. We would boogie board, then we'd rally with our parents, and we just did whatever it was on the beach. And it was such a healthy environment to grow up in. I feel like the first time I was exposed to the sport, like at the higher level, kind of, it was semi-professional. They were playing for free dinners at Chart House.
Oh,
Was when I was
nice.
11, and I fell in love with the sport. It was such a cool vibe, and there were warriors, and it was, it's a sexy setting. You're out on the beach, everyone's tan and fit, and it was so much fun. I was hooked. From age 11 on, beach volleyball was my passion.
So when did that get really big? Because one thing that I really, I may have mentioned to you before, but uh, I spent a year out in Orange County back in the late, sort of in '87-ish, and it seemed like beach volleyball was really starting to hit its stride then. We had all the guys and women, and a lot of the big names were playing then, and I had such a blast going to all the tournaments in Manhattan Beach. And I think in Laguna, and there were some other locations all over the place, and that was just such a great time. But how long had it been going at that level? I mean, was it something that was founded in the early '80s, or when did that really get going?
So, I mean, there was kind of a tradition of, beach volleyballs up and down the coast, but it was, just kind of a natural occurrence. People were, like I said, playing for free dinners. But in 1984, they decided, hey, let's form a players union. They actually got my husband, Leonard Armato, who was an attorney at the time, to represent them. So in 1984, they did a little strike and said, hey, we want rights as players, and it turned into something amazing. It became the AVP tour. I believe by 90, the players were making 6 figures. And I mean, to this day, they're not making 6 figures, but we've had some booms in our sport where people made a lot of money right now. And the grassroots are amazing in the sport of beach volleyball, the pro level, not so much. So I've seen it kind of go up and down, but it started in '84 with that strike.
Got it, '84. So yeah, so I was, I guess, there when it was hitting its stride, and then a few years later, I attended an event at Madison Square Garden where they obviously brought in tons and tons of sand, and it was a great time there. Although to me, it was pretty bizarre without the sun beating down on you and stuff. We were in dark, not darkness, but it was like manufactured light, but it was still a lot of fun. So so you obviously grew up there. You started playing it at 11. You obviously not only enjoyed it, but you were pretty damn good at it, and you crushed it in high school. And then you went to UC. Um, uh,
I went to
for
Berkeley.
Berkeley, right?
It's funny because I started at Berkeley. I was there for 3 years, and my original coach left. This crazy coach came in who was completely unprofessional, didn't have the same goals as I did. And I ended up giving my scholarship up after my junior year, saying I'd rather play somewhere where people actually care what's going on. So I moved back home to Manhattan Beach, and I walked on at UCLA. On day 2, I was given a scholarship. So it kind of all worked out. And it was actually my dream season at UCLA. fight for that starting position because there was a girl who was in that position before me. But it was amazing. We had one loss in the preseason and went undefeated the rest of the year and won the NCAA title. So things happen for a reason. I didn't want to leave Cal. I loved Berkeley, but I'm passionate about my sport and the work that I put into it. And, you know, I was willing to sacrifice in order to have another opportunity to do well and enjoy it again.
That's incredible. So at what point did you say, or did you realize, well, you know what, I'm going to make this a career versus, you know, becoming something else?
No, it's funny. I didn't. You know, I was finishing school. I grew up where I spent all my summers playing beach volleyball. There's a location in Manhattan Beach called Marine Street, and that was the hub for all the pro players. But I grew up there, so I knew everybody. They all said, hey, Holly, serve me balls. I was, you know, young. I was 15, 16. Hey, Holly, come set me balls. I was willing to do whatever it took to help them. But it helped me as well. And, you know, so it was just something I was going to do in the summer after I graduate. And I actually got asked to play in a pro tournament in Florida by somebody who I didn't even know. And I was like, gosh, you know, I was confident in my game, but I had no idea what they were about. And we went, I had zero money, and charged it on my student credit card. It was $500. I'll never forget it because I was stressed. And we were able to place ninth, and we made $1,000. So I made a little money and kind of just built on that. So when did I think it was going to be a career? I didn't really think that until maybe year 2 or 3. It was just kind of something I did during the summer. And then as I finished school, I had more opportunities. I was winning more money. I was getting sponsors. And then all of a sudden, it was, you know, 9 months out of the year, I was competing all over the world, and it became a career.
And, you know, it's amazing because, you know, I think a lot of people, when they view professional athletes, they say, oh, this person, you know, they've been grooming to be a professional baseball player for their whole lives, or whatever for their whole lives. But most athletes just kind of go, you know, just like what you did. You played in school, but you weren't necessarily saying, I'm going to be, well, partially in your case, because there wasn't really a specific league to do and so forth. But then all of a sudden now you're like, wait, I get paid to play? This is awesome, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, you know, there's a natural pyramid, you know, as you go up the levels, people fall off, whether it's not their passion, they're not good enough.
Right.
So, you know, I was just trying to be the best I could be all that time. And then once I got there, opportunities started presenting themselves. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I will take these opportunities. And I kind of thought, oh, you know, make the best of them. These are the opportunities. I originally wanted to go to law school. And I thought, oh, I'll just go back to law school, you know, when this kind of fizzles out or whatever. And it just didn't. It kept growing and growing and growing. And then 20 years later, I'm like, wow, you know, it just wasn't what I expected and what I planned for. But I did want to take the opportunity to travel around the world doing something that I love, because that was my passion and that was important to me.
So you going back to law school?
No. No, my husband did that. So,
yeah, I was going to say he's got the lawyer box checked in their family. That's great.
Yeah.
So then Olympics, and you know, I think it's tons of people's dreams to be an Olympian. The idea of, even if you end up in 88th place in whatever it is, the idea of marching into that stadium and marching behind the flag bearer and all this kind of stuff, and being just part of that experience must have been a thrill. But then I also know that some people, depending on when they're competing, they don't necessarily get to go in either the in or the out, the march in or the march out and stuff. But at your first Olympic in '96, were you able to march in, or what was your experience?
Oh, yes. So, well, interesting. So in 1984, the Olympics were in Los Angeles.
Right. Yeah.
I was, I don't know, 12, I was 13 years old. I was like, wow. Because I was always athletic, very competitive. And I was watching it going, oh my gosh, I was moved when athletes, I mean, it was an international world stage when athletes were up on the podium. I mean, that feeling to be the best. And, you know, I was just like, wow. I didn't, you know, I was impressed. I didn't go, oh, I want to be an Olympian, but I was like, wow, I was really motivated. So to be able to represent our country, to walk in opening ceremonies. First of all, let me tell you the other side, because everybody sees opening ceremonies. It's dreamy. It's amazing. You go at 2 p.m. they give you an outfit to wear. We had a very unattractive outfit, unattractive shoes. We're used to being barefoot. It was like they had pumps and pantyhose and weird stuff. It wasn't good. But we went at 2 p.m. and I mean, you can imagine all the athletes from all the countries filing in. So there was a lot of standing around. By the time we actually got seated, we sat in the stadium that was right next to where we were going to be for opening ceremonies.
Yeah.
And sat there for hours. They fed us. The only fun thing was like the dream team, the NBA guys were there, and that was kind of fun, you know, getting to meet people. It was very social. But
Yeah.
I mean, so we got in there about 5:30 and we didn't march till 9:30. By the time we got out of the stadium, we have to find buses, and that's a long way. I didn't even get back into my bed till 2:33 in the morning. My feet hurt. I had waited in a lot of lines. I was grumpy, you know, so yes, it was amazing. Yes, I'll never forget it, but it was the longest night of my life. It really was. I'm not kidding.
That's
Everything hurt.
And you're absolutely right. Look, there's a reason why a lot of this stuff is meant for TV or so forth, is that you're right. The public doesn't see a lot of stuff, right? In every sport, you know, any sport, you know, if you're watching swimming, you don't see the hours and hours of grinding it out in the pool. In beach volleyball, you don't see the hours and hours of practicing your set or your serve. It's just boom, you know, you turn on TV, NBC, whatever it is, and there's pro beach volleyball, and there it is with 2-on-2. They've got the beer sponsors, the crazy wacky people, I mean, all making their noise, loud rock and roll music, beer, this and that, and you're like, yeah, we're on. And then nobody sees the other side. And so we all imagine that you spend your life just hanging out, chilling and drinking beer or whatever and playing volleyball, and it's not like that.
It's interesting because, you know, being a pro beach volleyball player, one, you're your own boss. So whatever you put into the sport, you'll get out of it. And a lot of people, that was their pitfall. They didn't have a coach anymore. They didn't have a schedule. They didn't, you know, I grew up very regimented. My dad was a Marine. I had really strict coaches. And I was like, game on. If I'm my boss, I'm going to just drive this vehicle as far as I can. So I was super disciplined. But I saw a lot of people get distracted by the partying and you know, I mean, it's a distracting venue. It's very sexy. You know, but I was there, I had goals, and, you know, it was fun. When you win, you can celebrate and enjoy, but next day you're back to work. So that's one of the toughest things about being a professional athlete. You know, you have to have that self-motivation and that drive and that passion, especially in our sport. We hire our coaches. You know, it's not like you're the Patriots and you've got Belichick, you know, and you know who you have, and he's driving the ship. You are driving your own. So that was a big challenge.
Well, and you're right, because when you're a solo or a player in a solo sport, it can be in golf, it can be in tennis, whatever it is, right? People fail to realize that unless you're, you know, a significant player, you don't necessarily have the lawyer, the accountant, the publicist, the agent, all these different things to handle all this stuff. And a lot of times you do on top of your training and on top of the appearances and the endorsements and all that sort of thing. So it's a lot of, I know you know this. Why am I telling you this? It's a ton of work. It's incredible. So you're in the '96 Olympics. You end up you finish in 5th. Were you? I mean, to me that's amazing. But were you happy with that? Not really, for your first Olympics.
Super disappointed.
Okay.
You know, there's always a story, and you know, the Olympics. The challenge is it's once every 4 years.
Right.
You have to be at your best. My partner Nancy Reno and I were the best in the world, hands down. Nobody even stood a chance. We qualified the summer before, and the January prior to that summer Olympic Games, my partner tore her rotator cuff on her hitting shoulder. She was a big physical athlete who relied on her jump serve, relied on her blocking, relied on her hitting. So to not have her shoulder healthy was tough. This was the first time beach volleyball was going to be an Olympic sport. She wasn't going to bow out and have an alternate replace her. So what she did is she did every type, she got shots and did everything she could with rest. She lived in San Diego. I lived in LA. It's a 2-hour drive. And we weren't able to train and prepare because most of the time she was resting. So I was on my own, you know, trying to prepare. And we just never got back to where we were before that injury. So that was really unfortunate. And so, yeah, because we're the gold medal favorites, that was disappointing. But that injury really hurt us.
And so I'm always curious about this in beach volleyball. I mean, there are some partner changes that happen occasionally or frequently or a lot, right? Is it, in your opinion, is it a personality thing? Is it sort of like a beach volleyball marriage that kind of gets frayed, or is it a skill set thing where people's skill sets change and they mesh better with other people? What's it usually like?
Well, it's interesting because for men and women, it's different, I think. Guys just want to win. They don't care if they like their partner. It's all about winning. But chemistry is really important, and women really want to have that chemistry with their partner. Now, I've had lots of different partnerships. I won with, I think, 11 different partners. So I won with all sorts of different kind of chemistry and relationships with my partner. One of my favorites was a girl named Cami Chirelli, who was intense, all in. She was actually a mother of two, but she came, worked so hard, was so professional, and then left. And then I had people who were kind of like very different from me, but once we got on the court, boom, we dominated with their skill set and mine combined. We were unstoppable. So then once I played with one of my best friends, and that was good, but at the same time, I'm tough. I like to drive our team and make sure we're all in preparing the way we need to succeed. So I had all sorts of different partners. Skill sets are really important. I was a defender. I needed a big physical blocker at the net. And I couldn't have somebody who was, one, flaky, two, not driven or competitive. I couldn't. I would rather take someone who's raw, who has the physical potential, than somebody who's flaky and not all in, because I am all in. And with two people on the court, and if you don't have that next to you, it's not going to work.
That's great. I mean, yes, chemistry is absolutely essential. Now, you go to Sydney in 2000 and you play with Misty May. At that time, were you guys also still considered favorites, or what was happening there?
Well, so the interesting thing about Misty May is it's a 2-year Olympic qualifying process. And I actually tried to go with Nancy Reno. We started the qualifying process together, and just the chemistry wasn't there anymore. And she actually dumped me right in the middle of the Olympic qualifying process. So I was left with 1 year to qualify for the Olympic Games, and everybody was already teamed up. All the top players. I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? So I just brainstormed. There was this young player who just finished her senior year in college. Her name was Misty May. She grew up on the beach, but she hadn't played any pro tournaments or anything. So tracked her down, took her out to dinner. And she was young, like immature. Like I was like, wow, it seemed like she was about 13 because she just hadn't been out. She was finishing college, and I was a pro who had traveled the world already. So I finally said, hey, we have this crazy opportunity to do what nobody else has ever done. We have a year to qualify against all these great teams who've had 2 years. Are you in or are you out? And, next day she calls me, she's like, I'm in. So I'm like, okay, be at my house, 9 a.m. tomorrow. We start this process. Boom. So I'm on the beach waiting at 9 a.m. Nobody's there. I call her and she's at home. She's like, yeah, I have a really bad headache. Like, were you going to call me? We're sitting on the beach waiting. So there's a lot of teaching. But so, sorry, I got a little carried away and distracted. But what happened was we had to grind every tournament. So we would have to play in the qualifier because she had no points. Right. And then we'd play through the main draw. Then we travel. Then the next day we're in another qualifier. So she just hadn't trained and prepared for that. And she got hurt in the middle of the Olympic qualifying process. She had a small tear in her ab, but we couldn't really stop. I said, hey, we can stop. Don't worry about it. Your health is more important. She's like, no, I'm not stopping. And we kept going, but the tear started getting bigger and bigger. And by the time we actually clinched the Olympic spot and did what nobody except us thought we could do, she was hurting pretty bad. Our last tournament, she was serving underhand. She couldn't really hit. She would poke it around. It was challenging. So prior to the Sydney Olympics, yes, we were one of the best teams in the world. She was hurt. She laid down for 6 weeks trying to rest that ab, doing rehab. We flew to Canada to meet with the specialist. I mean, we did all we could, but we really had about a week and a half to train together. And we just didn't regain that same level. Once again, I'm like, okay, 2 Olympics and I'm having the same thing. What is wrong? So I was heartbroken because Misty and I, it was interesting. So a month later, after Sydney Olympics, we went to Brazil, crushed everybody because she had had that time to ramp up. So timing is everything, and so hard. But we gave it our all. We did what we could, and you got to move on.
But 4 years later, you got your medal.
Mm-hmm.
You got it.
4 years later, I finally got a partner who was healthy. But by that time, I was not on the downside, but I wasn't the dominant player that I was in those first 2 Olympic Games. Carrie Walsh and Misty May had taken over that top spot.
Right.
We were in the top 3, and possibly number 2 in the world, but there was another great Brazilian team too. So I was thrilled to get on that Olympic podium at that point. Thrilled.
Well, and it's, I'm sure, yes, on one hand you're disappointed you don't have the gold, but on the other hand, it had to be standing up there probably a little surreal, and it probably happened like that too, I'm guessing, right? Or was it?
It was a blur. It was a blur. It's funny because yesterday on my Instagram, I posted our podium picture because the 5 girls that I shared the podium were some of my best friends. And some of the people, I played with all of them, well, except for the Brazilians, but they are 2 of my very good friends. And it was just an amazing moment. It was probably the high point of my beach volleyball career, and I had a long one.
That's amazing. So speaking of that, just jumping ahead a little bit, you continue playing, but then finally, a few years later, you decide, well, I don't bring it as much as I used to. It's time to pull the plug. But what was it that, I guess, made you decide that, like exactly like waking up one day and you said, okay, that's it? Or was it something where you said, you know what, this is my last season, or I'm going to stop after next tournament? Or what was that decision like?
It's really interesting as a professional athlete, knowing when that is. I literally kept thinking that I was going to turn the corner and be able to start winning again. And I had some injuries. I had double toe surgery on my big toes from digging in the sand. And just some little tweaks, and I wasn't playing at the level I wanted to play. And as hard as it was, because I literally thought, okay, next week I'm going to win, but I could never turn that corner. So it just happened. I had 3 bad finishes. There was some political stuff in the sport that I wasn't a fan of, that I had battled for 20 years. I'm like, it's such a mess politically, that I'm like, I'm done. And, I never looked back. It's funny because I'm considerably older and I still think I can compete with those girls. So it's all in your mind. My body probably says no, but I'm still very competitive.
Well, it's interesting. As an older person than you and lots of other people, it's interesting because when you're 18, 25, even 35, whatever, you still have the physical capabilities to be dominant. But even when you're 50 plus or something, I still feel like, wait a minute, if I go out on the golf course, or I play rugby, or I play tennis, or whatever it is I play, or ice hockey, I still feel like I should be dominating, even though I suck. I suck at hockey, but I still go out there feeling like I should be Gretzky. I mean, I should. Or on the golf course, I should be hitting the shot like Tiger Woods. And it's funny because when you're an athlete, that the competitiveness doesn't go away, and the desire to compete, desire to win, all that stuff doesn't go away. But sort of the body kind of says, yo, time out.
The body's not really what it was. It's funny because it used to be every Thursday for maybe 10 years. I play with a group of former pro girls, and we compete 4-on-4 on the beach. And we're playing at a high level. I mean, I think we're playing at a high level, but we invite current pros to kind of spice up our game, but we're competitive. And it's literally my favorite day of the week because I love to compete. I love to leave the beach exhausted, sweaty, sandy. My favorite day. And, obviously in this quarantine, we have not been able to play. The Wednesday before we shut down, we did get to play. We weren't giving 5 because, there's a lot of talk going on. But we got to play, and boy, I miss that day. I think it's important. Some athletes don't want to compete when they're done, but I love it. I compete. I work out at Orange Theory. I love to compete there. Maybe people don't think they're competing with me, but I'm like, game on, let's go.
That's funny. Well, you're right about that. It's interesting. I do see and hear lots of professional athletes that they'll say, "I don't want to jump in a pool again," or "I don't want to
Oh
play
yeah.
hockey again." You know, it's. And there's one guy I know. You know, he's a pretty sort of famous hockey player, and he played a long time, that sort of thing. But he said he can't go out there because he's afraid he might hurt somebody because he might, you know, still check them, or like it'll just be an instinct to just go in and crush somebody in a men's league or something.
Probably hurt
So,
himself.
and absolutely. So let's talk about that transition a little bit, because you started to realize, okay, you know, I'm not bringing it like I used to. It's time to pull the plug. But did you have something already in mind to do next, or had you thought about it, prepared for it? Not really.
Well, it's
Just
funny. So for probably, I don't know, my last 4 years of my career, my husband was like, hey, you need to, kind of start thinking about what you're going to do after volleyball. And I'm like, I'm all in. This is it. Because I am, that's how I am. I'm
yeah,
100% in. It's hard for me to like have one foot over here. And he kept telling me that. And I'm like, I'm like kind of thought about some stuff, but I never did a good job of that. I did start doing some TV broadcasting. So that was kind of a side gig, and I had to study it and practice it. I was awful at first. Hated being on camera, would say the same word 5,000 times. I was bad. So it took some work. But I got, a lot of reps doing that. So I continued to do that once I was done, but I still had obviously a lot of free time. So I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I worked with my brother in finance for a little bit. That wasn't for me. And, just kind of things unfolded. I became a mom, and then opportunities started, coming out of that. Eric Moyer, who's a 2000 gold medalist in my sport, called me after I had had my son and said, hey, I want to start a beach volleyball club for women, and I need, someone like you to help me. I'm like, I'm in, let's do it. And it's been 8 years, and it's grown and grown. We put, over 65 girls in college to play. We've helped others get into school, and I become a mentor for a lot of young women. So it just keeps growing and growing. I mean, I get texts and notes on Instagram and LinkedIn daily asking, hey, I live in so-and-so, can I come out and train with you? I mean, the list is long. I'm like, I would love to train you, but our beaches need to open first. But
yeah,
so it's kind of just
yeah.
turned into something. It's funny because I say, okay, now I have 3 seasons. I have in the fall, which starts in September through December, is my indoor volleyball TV season.
Okay,
November through March is my beach club season when I'm coaching on the beach. And then March through May is my beach volleyball TV season. And then summer, I'm on the beach with my son, my family, and I train a lot of the pros and upcoming players all summer long. So kind of a 4-season girl.
now, speaking of your camp and so forth, obviously what we're going through now with the whole coronavirus has been obviously challenge for everybody in different ways. In your case, it's obviously really stopped your way of running a business and your business. How and your, from what I understand, you mentioned earlier, your campus is younger. You know, it's younger. It's young adults and children, right? And so, how do you? Is there a way to keep them engaged, or how do you do it? I mean, these are, teens, right?
Yeah, well, our elite beach volleyball club in Manhattan Beach, we're 6th grade through 12th grade.
Right.
We were wrapping up our club season because it ends at the end of March. We had
Okay.
3 practices left. We celebrate our seniors those days. We do a bunch of stuff. I mean, it was just right around the corner. And we were forced to shut it down. And not
Mm.
only that, so we all stopped. Then they cut down every beach volleyball net on our beach, every single one in one day. I was blown away. I did not ever see that coming. So we couldn't do anything, obviously. We chose to go with some virtual lessons. Our last 3 lessons, each of our Olympic coaches, Barbara Fontana, who's one of the other owners, Eric Moyer, and myself, we chose a topic and we did a Zoom lesson. And So we're teaching the other side of the game. And it was really well received. As an athlete, there's three ways you can train. One, you can train your body for strength, for speed, whatever you need for your sport. Two, you can train your skills, your skill set, which is touches on the ball. How are you going to set, bump, defense? The third thing is something that people can do while in quarantine, and that's the mental side of the game.
Yeah.
So we tried to present that to our athletes and kind of give them some information, because I don't think a lot of people, especially growing up, like junior athletes, don't pay a lot of attention to that part of the sport. And as you know, when it gets to the highest level, it's who's mentally tougher, who's going to be it. And this is a great opportunity to focus on that and get better at it.
So give me an example of that mental training. I mean, give me, what sort of, were you giving them sort of advice on how to train, or was it more like do these things to prepare for your training, or?
Well, so our different things were, mine was preparation. It's preparing. How do you prepare in those three areas: the physical, the skill, and the mental? There's visualization, there's positive self-talk, there's being in touch with reality, because some people have crazy expectations, instead of like, okay, this is where I'm at, these are my goals, how am I going to get there? So goal setting is another thing. So we were trying to give them tools. We had different athletes come on and share their tools. We obviously played 20 years ago, but we have a lot of tools that we use. So we would share those. But for me, obviously, positive self-talk, staying positive on the court. What's my mentality when things are going down the tubes? Next play. You can't do anything about the past. Leave it behind you. What was that? The visualization, positive self-talk, and then the tools while you're in the heat of the battle to, persevere, stop the bleeding, turn things around. Because, when things are going great, it's easy. But it's when you're struggling where you need that mental toughness. And I know one of the things that I really gained was I gained confidence from my preparation. So when push came to shove and I was in the heat of the battle, I knew that I had prepared to succeed. And I think confidence is important in anything you do, even if it's off the court, it's not in sports. If you go into a presentation and you are prepared to kill it, you're going to kill it and you're going to be well received.
Preparation, absolutely. So you mentioned visualization earlier, and that's something that that's been a common theme with a lot of my guests. We talk about that, and that's critical. But tell me about what you would do if you're out there and let's say you've lost 8 straight points. You're on a you were up 10-2 or something, and now it's 10-10 or something. How do you? I mean, do you sort of do all right, I'm going to pretend to tie my shoelace even though you're not wearing shoes?
Well, I mean, obviously there's those kind of tactics where, I mean, first of all, we're covered in sand. You can wipe the sand off. You got sand in your eyes. You got sweat in your glasses. There's a lot of things you can do. There's only 2 of you. There's no subs, so you can't hide. We'll switch sides. We'll run a play. For me, I would reset my brain, step off the court, leave the negativity, come back to the court fresh. And focus on one contact at a time. Not so much the side out, but okay, here's my first contact. Let's make it great. Then, okay, I'm preparing for my next contact. Sometimes you have to break it down like that and keep it simple for your brain. And when you've only got one thing to focus on, it kind of clarifies things and you're able to, execute that, whatever that is. So that's one of the things that I would do, when I was struggling. Obviously, timeouts, I would do whatever it took to, get my mind fresh and right.
I also realize now, I'm sure you never lost 8 points in a row, so I should watch what I say.
Well, no, unfortunately, I'm sure I did.
No.
But you play sports for that long, sometimes the wheels come off.
But Coach Holly, I will tell you, I appreciate what you said about that notion of keeping it simple and then more importantly, focusing on one thing at a time, because it's the same in business. It's the same in anything you're doing. Look, I'm king of I pick myself as king of the bright, shiny object, distracted kind of person. I'm very impatient. I like to do things a lot, but then I'm always like, ooh, look at that. I got to do that. Ooh, look at that. And it's almost like whack-a-mole and stuff. So I need to be better, even at my advanced state of everything, to really be better at focusing on, okay, just focus on this. And so even if it's in your case, the next touch, don't worry about the last touch, and don't worry
Yep.
about the 2 touches from now or 3 touches from now.
Yeah.
Just
And
get through
guess
the
what?
next one.
Don't think about the last 8 that you just really struggled with, because there's nothing you can do to change that. You know,
Right.
one of my favorite sports psychologists is a man named Michael Gervais. He has a great podcast if you want to listen to it, but he gives you so many tools. And every time I listen to him, I'm inspired. But he was telling other athletes, I've heard him say this, hey, let's say you're in serve receive and you don't want your mind to race, try and spell a word in your brain. And by trying to do that, you can't do 2 things at once, right? So you're trying to spell the word, you're not thinking about all the other periphery things. So kind of there's just tools like that. And that, I feel like that whole sports psychology is such an interesting field, and different tools work for different people. So if people want to learn about that, definitely look up his podcast or his book. He's great.
Well, that reminds me of, I love that try to spell a word thing. That's great, because one of the things I like to talk about is when I'm preparing people for interviews or meetings where they need to do well to move on to the next round, sort of a thing. What I talk about is that there's a habit of people to feel like they need to sell themselves, or they need to do a lot of the talking. And I say, look, the person that advances is usually the one that does the most listening, that they let the other person do the talking. Because when you're talking a lot, the other person can be like nodding their head and thinking, what's for lunch today? Or what time is the Yankees game on tonight, or whatever. Oh, that's really interesting, Holly, but I'm not really listening to you because I don't
Yeah.
care. And so I always tell people, when you're talking, you can't talk about one thing and think about something else. It's impossible. I mean, I can't
No,
anyway.
I mean, you have to be present, and that's,
Yeah.
yeah. One of the other things I think is really important is, for me, I love to learn. So listening is an important part of learning. And the fact that I want to keep learning, I don't like being bad at things, so I want to learn, I want to gain knowledge. I like learning about different people. I like learning about different things. And that's kind of one of the fun things about this quarantine time. This is a great pause in our life that we may never have again. Learn something new, practice. I mean, for me, I cook for my family almost every night. So I've been trying new recipes. I'm a little bit inspired in that area. I follow a bunch of new cooking channels on Instagram, and I love watching. I'm a foodie. So for me, I'm not the greatest chef, but I'm learning to make some cool stuff. And that's fun. Learning is fun, and it's addictive. When you get better at something, nothing better.
All right. If I wasn't 2,600 and whatever miles away, I'd come over for dinner. That's
Yeah.
I'm jealous of Leonard big time right now. This is that's awesome. Congrats on that. So one of the a little chunk of a quote that I saw that your high school coach talked about you, and really said that you would do anything that you could to win, and you'd do it twice as hard as the next person, and you'd go the extra mile. And I think that's such a great lesson to teach people, because you know yes, some people may be naturally gifted, naturally talented, or they're born with a great voice or something, or you can't, they always say you can't teach height, you can't teach speed, but what you can teach is that work ethic, and that work ethic will always win, because I may be the tallest person in the room, but maybe if I'm only half interested in dunking a basketball, well, then that other person that may be 6 inches shorter than me will best me. And so I think
Yeah.
that's a great lesson. Is that, how do you try to teach that to your students or anybody you're training? Because it's, like, I'm impatient. I feel like I'm pressured to teach everybody else to be impatient, and that's not going to be that. Their people are who they are, and you're deeply committed to what you do. How do you try to get other people to get at your level, or can you?
Well, so it's interesting going back to my career. I was not the most physical, for sure. I mean, I'm only a little under 5'7", and I played against some great physically talented athletes, but they didn't have the drive and the dedication and the determination that I had. So I felt like that was my advantage. I'm gritty, and maybe because I'm undersized and I have something to prove, and nobody ever thought I'd win a tournament. That is what drives me. I don't know. I mean, because you see these like phenoms, these physical phenoms, you're like, oh my gosh, but do they have the same drive? I mean, it comes naturally for them. Do they have the same drive that it takes? Because I have to prove something every single time I step on the court. My husband calls me the little engine that could, because I don't take no for an answer. There's something I want, I go for it. But I think maybe that's because of my upbringing, because of, I'm small and I had more to prove. I figured out that that was the only way that I could compete with everybody. And if I wanted to compete, I had to work that much harder. So that's what worked for me.
So I'm hoping that people, when they watch this episode down the road as a replay, months from now, and they'll say, wait a minute, there was a virus. They're not going to say that, but what do you feel? What's your vibe on, or what are you hearing of when you might have the chance to reopen again and be out there again?
We've been shut down for almost 11 weeks, and we're in LA County. Orange County is to the south of us, Ventura is to the north of us. Orange County is pretty much open. We have athletes that are now driving to Orange County to train, and to Ventura. So it's frustrating for us. We feel like any day, we feel our beaches are open. There's tons of people at the beach. Why can't we responsibly get on a court, socially distance,
right,
and be responsible about it? We really think like we would be providing a great service for these athletes mentally and physically to get out there to play the sport they love, to get some fresh air. But we're lobbying daily with the county, the city, everything. The county controls our beaches. Last night I got a note and they said, we're really excited. You can play beach volleyball, just one or two. They said singles or doubles. Okay, I get doubles, but singles, I don't know. So I don't know if they mean rallying or what, but you can't have a net. I'm like, well, we can do that anyway. So I just don't get the challenge that a net, what kind of a safety issue is that?
Well, the net's got to be made out of mask material, I guess.
Right?
So that's what,
Yeah. It doubles on a court. There's plenty of open space. And we're instructing our athletes not to give each other five, not to touch the face. We're trying. So we're going to be responsible. We have a protocol in place, and we are just antsy to get out on the beach.
I think antsy is a great word to describe pretty much the entire country. Look, we know that a lot of it is already opened up, but I'm in New York, and New York is one of those states that obviously we got slammed the hardest, and therefore we're the last to sort of open up a lot of things. And, we can't even getting the dog groomed is not available yet because they're not opening up those stores yet. And it's just the littlest things. Or haircuts, whatever.
COVID haircut.
Exactly.
We've done several of those. We are a family of five. We have two older boys, 32 and almost 30, and then a 9-year-old. So it's been fun, but the oldest cut our youngest hair last night, and he did a great job. So I did my husband's. So, we're just trying to figure it out. But the beauty part, like my nails, I'm doing them myself. All the things that we miss. But that kind of stuff is
it's funny. It's funny. I tried doing my nails too, but I'm okay there. But I totally get what you're talking about. It's and not just the grooming thing, but there's just I think everybody just wants, like I was telling someone else, all I want, the thing I look forward to the most is just going to my neighborhood bar, getting a beer and watching a baseball game on TV, and not like I couldn't imagine talking to my buddy right next to me with a mask on and like trying to put the beer. I don't even know. So I think we're all, that's one. It may be hard to say compared to lots of other people that have lost a lot and so forth. And I get all that, but I think a lot of us just want to get to some level of normalcy. So speaking of that, is your, just to wrap things up a little bit, is your business, your camp and so forth, is it in a position that, everybody will, as far as will come back in? Or are you concerned that you might lose some people?
We're very confident that they're going to come back in. We've stayed connected to them. Okay. It's interesting because we didn't know how long this was going to go, but immediately we said, let's set up a call every week. Let's make our business better behind the scenes, because, when you're on the treadmill of life and going so fast, you don't have time to, one, make your website better, two, to come up with a plan for new products, new strategies. What can we do better? So we've done a really good job of using this time to focus on those things. We have the time. We're stuck at home. So let's focus on this. Let's make a plan. Here's what we're going to do better. Here's what we're going to do next year. We've organized all our workouts. We've got, a Dropbox. We've got everything organized because we've had the chance to do it. So we're trying to make our business better for the future. And we know that our product is great. We have a fantastic coaching. Our track record's amazing. So we're confident that they'll come back. And I mean, we get texts every day, please open. But like I said, they're driving now to train with other coaches because we're unable to do that. Still no
Yeah.
nuts on our beach.
Well, soon enough, I'm sure they'll LA County will wake up and get the nets back up and so forth.
I hope
So
so.
to tie together a couple of little sort of loose ends and that sort of thing, if you could give a couple of bits of advice that really we've already talked about, but sort of a couple of takeaways from our chat, especially for athletes who are considering retirement or are transitions or have already transitioned, what would you like to tell them?
Gosh, have a plan. I see some athletes, especially in our sport, beach volleyball, now they don't make very much money. And to try and enter the workforce after your career, you're 35, 40 years old, everyone's been working, progressing in their career. And you have to start down here. And it's hard and it's frustrating. So I recommend for athletes along the way, because you can only be an athlete for this long, and you're one injury away from having to get a normal job. So yes, take advantage of the opportunities to play a sport and get paid, but definitely have a backup plan, because if you don't, you'll get stuck and you'll be entering the workplace in a place that you don't want to, making very little money. And that was a hard thing for me. I had great sponsor money, and then boom, I was like, whoa, I am broke. I mean, and I had saved money and put it in retirement. But when you're used to a certain amount of money coming in and then there's nothing, I mean, I can see how the NBA guys,
Oh,
go
yeah.
broke, or the NFL, because you are so used to that flow of money, you don't think it's going to go away. And especially them. I mean, they make a ton of money. That's a whole nother level. But same thing. I mean, 10,000 or not, it's going to affect you. It's going to affect what you do, how you travel, what you're able to do. So I think, try and find your passion outside the sport. And also, one of the things I did really well, and it served me well, is I established a lot of relationships with different companies. So my sponsors, I had agents that worked out the deal for me, but
Mm.
I did all the communication with my sponsors and the people at those companies. And they moved around 10 companies, and I run into them, and we have relationships still. Some of them help me to this day. Like Wilson Volleyball helped sponsor our club because of the relationships that we had back in the day. So create relationships. Relationships, you never know when they're going to help you. Some big people out there that I have good relationships with. I have a podcast, Sports Like a Boss podcast, and I've been able to get amazing people on them because of the relationships that I've created. So don't neglect relationships, because they can really help you and you can help them.
That's great advice, and it's something that I talk to all the time with the athletes, because I think most athletes feel that everybody out there are the fanboys, the fangirls, and I try to say no. There's a whole lot of people out there that they may know who you are, and they may like you or not like you, but they're also important in their industries, and they're critical people to add to your network. So you're absolutely right. It's important to sort of keep on building and sort of sustaining that network of people that can help you, but you can also help them. And then at the same time, yeah, you're right. Always be prepared for what's happening next and that sort of thing. So lastly, if people want to reach out to you, if they want to connect with you or join your social network, or heck, join your club and so forth, what's the best way to do that?
Well, there's on LinkedIn. I'm on LinkedIn. Instagram, I'm on the most, is my social media platform. It's at Holly McPeak. And I get notes all the time, or at Elite Beach Volleyball. I'm in charge of the social media for our club. One of my jobs, we all have jobs. I'm social media and marketing. The people I work with refuse to do any social media. They don't know how to do Instagram. So that's me. But would love to have anybody follow or, connect either way.
That's great. Well, look, once again, I mean, thank you so much for your time, Holly. You're a perfect sort of guest for this particular webinar series, simply because you are not only making an impact and you're such a great role model in the sport itself, but also really a good spokesperson for the concept of athlete transition and what they should do, and really growing a business once you've retired. And that's really important. I think a lot of athletes struggle with that whole notion of becoming elite at what they do again. And
Yeah.
you may have gone through some of this, but now I think it's
Yeah.
without a doubt you're back up again. So that's
Well,
awesome.
I think some of the skills that I learned through sports have really helped prepare me. You just translate them to business, and the work ethic, the teamwork, all those things have really helped.
Perfect. That's great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Holly. I can't wait to hear about the Nets being up again and you being back at the camp and teaching people again and so forth. And thanks again for being on.
Yeah, thank you. My pleasure. Have a great day.
You too. Thanks.